Good morning, and I'd like to welcome you to the call today. Today we're going to be talking about the 4 ways the internet is making small business a lot more money. And joining me for the call today, I've got James Eling from Extreme Networks. I've known James for many years now, and I know that he's been very sort of vigilant about finding out the latest about technology and what's happening and making sure that he can serve his clients in the best way. But most interestingly to me is that he's pretty passionate about understanding marketing, internet marketing, and how it's impacting the small business. So I'd like to welcome James to the call today. Welcome, James.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone.
So tell me a bit about this topic, because it was your suggested topic, 4 ways the internet's making small business a lot of money. So maybe tell me a bit about the topic and a bit about your background.
Okay, so I think that there's some fundamental changes that are occurring for small businesses that are being brought around by the internet. It's changing the ways that people act, and it's changing the ways that a lot of industries are profitable and how people are conducting their businesses in those industries. And you only need to look at things like, selling books, which 5 years ago was quite a viable business, and now there's very few people who are doing that in Australia profitably. A lot of the big players have closed down. So it's really important that small business owners get a really good grip on what's changed, the threats that it creates for their business, but more importantly, focus on the opportunities that it creates, because the opportunities are a lot bigger than the threats, I think.
Absolutely. Look, and the other thing is really there's two kinds of change we see in the world. There's cyclic change and there's structural change. And the cyclic change is things like the share market or even the property market. It goes up, it goes down, even the economy goes through cycles. But what the internet has done is what's called structural change. And in my mind, that means that there is no going back, right? That means that it's there to stay, and it's changing the way people operate. And people are either going to change or they're going to die in business because of this technology that's around. So let's talk about the changes that the internet's made in people's lives.
So I think, when you look at there was a video that came out just recently, and it talked about what happens on the internet in 60 seconds. And some of the statistics were quite frightening. In 60 seconds, there's 2 million Google searches, nearly 2 million Facebook likes, 6 Wikipedia articles are created. So every minute, 6 Wikipedia articles are created. 200 million emails sent. Amazon ships nearly $80,000 worth of goods in 60 seconds.
This is all in 60 seconds?
In 60 seconds.
So this is amazing, because I noticed in your stats there, you also talked about the amount of hours, 100 hours of video uploaded to YouTube in 60 seconds.
In 60 seconds. This is the thing that is changing the way that people live their lives. People are sharing video. It's easy to do now. So it's changing the way that people live their lives. And if I think about my life, I was a subscriber to the Financial Review for probably at least 10 years, maybe 15 years. And when my subscription lapsed the last time, I thought, I wonder what it'd be like if I didn't get the Fin Review. And now, rather than getting out of bed, going down, getting the paper and reading it, I just lay in bed. I go to the 3 websites that give me the information that I need for the day, read those. And so I now no longer subscribe to the Fin Review. And this is the structural change that's affecting, print media.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about the internet and the way it's changed our lives. I know now that if we're sitting down watching TV, everyone has a laptop or an iPad on their lap, and they're trawling the internet while they're watching. It's sort of like it's become a natural progression. And you're right, because I read all my news online, if I do read news, and it's very much tailored to what I'm interested in. So I found a few great, websites or apps that I can use to just select the news that I'm interested in, my hobbies, and now I can read appropriate information when I need to. That's amazing. But this 1,000 hours every 60 seconds of video, I'm just wondering how they store it. But the thing that's amazing is that you can get so much knowledge off videos that are online now that it's unsurpassed. It's never been like this before, has it?
Definitely. And I think because of the internet taps into some psychological aspects of people, and a lot of people like to share information. And so when it comes to video, there's people out there who are creating videos about how to do things, instructional videos, videos from their kids' parties, which they want to share with relatives, all manner of things that are very easy to share now.
And it sort of comes down to that content is king discussion. And we were just talking before the call about the importance of creating content. And, some people, like for me, creating a blog, I can't think of anything that I'd want to do less and sit down every night and start typing up blogs because it's hard work. But creating content these days is not just about typing up blogs, is it?
No, there's a whole range of ways. So, videos, webinars, blogging, of course, is great from a search engine optimization point of view.
Yeah.
But it's a great way for business owners to be able to demonstrate their expertise.
Yeah.
Because the critical thing that we find is that there's not that many people who are creating great content.
Yep.
So it's quite easy to be seen as an expert in your industry.
Yep.
If you're creating the content.
Yep. Absolutely. And I suppose one of the important discussions, and really like one of the most dramatic changes for most small businesses, is what's happened in relation to their advertising dollar. Because, Google has now become, probably one of the primary expenses in online marketing on most people's profit and loss. There's definitely an expense account for Google, whether it's AdWords, whether it's SEO, but it's all about making sure that you're seen. So what's your perspective on that?
I think because of the way that the internet has changed the way that people live their lives, business owners, when they want to interact with their customers or to find new customers, need to be focusing the vast majority of their effort online because that's where their customers are.
Yeah.
And, it's quite clear that Google is the new Yellow Pages. At its peak, I think our IT company was spending $18,000 a year on Yellow Pages.
Yep.
We didn't like spending it, but you could always say, you know what, it was probably worthwhile because you'd name the customers that you got through Yellow Pages because we tested and measured, where our new customers were coming from.
Fantastic.
And you'd think, it's probably worthwhile.
Yeah.
And we saw that dwindle until we finally cut it. Now we're finding, because we run our own AdWords campaigns, we're spending a lot less, but we're getting much better effectiveness.
Right. And this whole idea, this notion of SEO and AdWords, some people, they're foreign to it. And I think really, like, considering it's a structural change, it's here to stay, it's probably a big responsibility for the business owner to at least understand what it is, especially if they're going to be spending that kind of money.
I think it's critical because of the fact that the business owner, if they don't have a written business and marketing plan, they will have in their head the components of the business and marketing plan. Like, what is their unique selling proposition?
Yep.
What are the problems that they solve for their customers?
Yeah.
Because one thing that you've got to think about with Google is that only people with problems use Google.
Yeah.
They're looking for an answer. So just like Yellow Pages, people picked up the Yellow Pages because I want to go out to a Thai restaurant in Frankston.
Yeah.
I want to buy a new car. I want to, get my hair cut. They had a problem that they needed to solve. They needed to find someone who provided those goods or services.
Yep.
SEO is exactly the same thing. You need to be thinking, what is the problem that I solve? What would people be searching for if they had that problem?
Yep.
And then what text should I put in there so that Google knows that I solved those people's problems?
Okay. So really, it's no different to the old, traditional marketing philosophy, which is making sure you understand the needs or the buying motives of your potential customer. But really, I suppose what I've seen with the internet is it gives us the ability to measure. It gives us the ability to track, and it gives us the ability to reach so many more people than we used to. But really, the philosophies are the same.
Absolutely. I think the philosophies are exactly the same, except it's a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Because in the old days, the Yellow Pages salesman would say, well, you know what, they probably saw your ad and then they came into your office to buy. And so it's actually a Yellow Pages sale, but, they didn't ring on the Yellow Pages number.
Right.
So, and that was the kind of argument that they used, which made it difficult to sort of really test and measure the effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can look at your Google Analytics and you can see exactly what's happening on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What it is that customers are searching for, how many times they're looking at your website.
Yeah.
With one of our online businesses, we actually marry up the search term that they use to their request so that when our telemarketers call them, we know if they're looking for a cost-effective website or if they're looking to find more customers during the quiet times, or whether they're looking for help with their business plan. So we know exactly what it is. So our telemarketers have got a heads up on what their problem is before they've even called them.
And this is really important because I think it's happening in many different ways. We're using a CRM that allows us the same sort of telemetry, is what I call it.
Yep.
Which means I can find out a lot of information about someone just by what they click on the website and build up a bit of a profile. So I can start to read into their issue before we've even had a conversation. Now, I think that's sort of becoming mandatory in marketing these days because of, it's easy to get a lot of hits on a website, and you can pay for AdWords and you can pay per click and you get a lot of traffic. But if that traffic doesn't convert into sales, it's not because the traffic was bad in a lot of cases. It's purely because there is no process to actually manage that. And we're hoping that by someone landing on our webpage, you're going to call our number. Now, here's the truth. People will land on our webpage looking for info, maybe just tire kicking. But if we don't know who they are or what they're doing, there's no real way to sort of take that on. So this whole idea of getting that keyword and using that as part of the customer service is a great idea. So it sort of leads me on to that next question, which is, how do you see small business changing the way they work?
I think that there's three real areas that they're sort of looking at. One, it's the way that the marketing is done.
Yep.
I think that the business processes that you put in place for that, and then the data which you're collecting.
Yeah.
So online marketing allows you to go for a much bigger target.
Yeah.
The businesses that we start now, as a default, are nationwide.
Right.
Because there's no difference between SEO for what we used to do in the past, which was, our local area, and Australia-wide. Okay. Google doesn't really differentiate too much around that.
Right.
So it's quite easy to be able to differentiate, to have a nationwide market. And with things like distribution and all of the tools that the internet gives you, like webinars, remote access to people's PCs, because we're in an IT business, it's quite easy to service customers Australia-wide. So that's our default setting is nationwide. And one of our businesses has already got export customers.
So going global.
Which for a little company with a couple of developers, and in fact, I just came back from last week from Auckland talking to some of our customers and some of our distributors over there. And realistically, the business plan is very similar compared to what we were doing. Right. Just with a bit of nuance with the internet marketing, and we've got customers in New Zealand.
Because I would agree with this. The majority of people we're working with now have the option to go global if they're not already global. In a lot of cases, it's by accident, because they'll put up their website and someone will search them out and they'll have conversations with people from all these countries around the world. And now the question is, how do we do business with these people? Which is amazing considering that there's probably, to go global in the old days meant a massive advertising campaign, massive distribution. And these days it's just about having a website, and all of a sudden people can. So really, I suppose what you're saying is that most small businesses, even backyarders, can be a global business almost immediately, just by the way that they market themselves, because they can get impact.
Absolutely. And there's, the typical business like that is the eBay trader who, will buy and sell goods using eBay's infrastructure to, start getting their feet wet. And then once they build up expertise in the area which they sell in, then they put their own website in, and then they start warehousing, and then they start doing all sorts of things. And before you know it, they're turning over millions of dollars. It's a great way to test and measure the effectiveness of your business. Because the internet provides you with a lot of free tools to scale your business up. So you can spin up a business very quickly and say, is this something that customers want?
And look, the other side of it is the number of contacts. And we talk about, the internet has made it much easier for people to get information. In the old days, it used to take something like statistically 4 contacts to get someone to convert into sale. These days, we're sort of up to around 16 contacts to get someone to even notice us. And it's got to do with just the amount of traffic that's hitting people. Because traditionally, there was a measurement done, I think it was 20 years ago, that the average person would have 200 marketing messages thrown at them a day. So now we're talking about 2,000 to 3,000 marketing messages a day just coming through internet, just through social media, just through so many different ways. So really, I suppose, for businesses to survive this change, they need to start upping the ante on their frequency of contact as well, and their structure. Because I know you mentioned business processes for customer support, for customers, staff, and suppliers. So to me, I see infrastructure or systems as critical, because the internet lends itself to systems. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think good systems will always collect as much data as they can, because once you've got the data, then you can start analysing it. And that's one of the things that was incredibly difficult in the past.
Yep.
But now there's a lot of tools out there. Many of them are free, which allow small businesses to be able to go through and start analysing their data in a much more professional way.
Okay, so really, just this knowledge that information is available is a starting point, but the next thing is what to do with it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
And so you look at the things like one of the big trends that we're seeing is big data. And so big data is where you collect a large amount of data and run a whole heap of queries over it to gain actionable insights into what it is that your customers are doing.
Okay.
And so all of the big companies do it. Coles have got their flybys where they analyse your spending patterns.
Yep.
Qantas frequent flyer, and I saw just this week they were looking at purchase. They want to create a toolbar for their members to be able to do search queries in their toolbar.
Right.
So they want to capture what you're looking for. So they know if you're looking at a competitor's website, or if you're planning a trip to Argentina.
Yeah.
That's what they want, that information to be able to target you much more finely.
So you got me intrigued with this big data, because you mentioned it to me. I've come to see one of your workshops on this. This is one of the reasons I asked you to come in today. I didn't know what big data was, and I suppose my question is, how is it relevant to the small business owner?
Okay, so the textbook example of big data would be Target in the United States.
Yep.
Their marketers were given the task of analysing women in the first trimester of pregnancy, because that is when you really need to start marketing to them. Second trimester is when they go out and make a lot of their big purchases, and also start to form up their patterns about where they're going to buy all of the consumables once the baby's born. And the third trimester, they are sitting there thinking, get this thing out of me.
Yep.
So they've got a very narrow window to be able to attract those new customers in an important part of the customer's life cycle.
Yep.
So they went through, analysed all of their data, and they thought they came up with a solution, and they started marketing. A few weeks later, a man comes into a Target store and asks to speak to the manager, and he's got a copy of an email that was sent to his 15-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And it was the "Hooray, you're having a baby" email, pretty much. Cots were on sale, all sorts of baby-related product were there. And he said, "You're sending this to my 15-year-old daughter. Do you want her to become pregnant?" The store manager said, there wasn't much he could do apart from apologise profusely. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. Obviously a horrible mistake. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again." The man rings the store 4 weeks later and says, "Obviously there was something going on in my house that you knew about that I wasn't aware." And what they'd done is they'd looked at the spending pattern of when they could see when someone was pregnant, because they'd go out and buy a pram and a cot and all of those sort of things. And then a little bit later, they'd start buying nappies. So that person is pregnant. They then went back into their purchasing pattern before that. And some of the things they looked at were things like people would change from scented hand soap to unscented. And there were a couple of other things that were key identifiers of pregnancy. Right. They were then able to work out an index. And so they were able to, with a high degree of confidence, target women who had no real signs of pregnancy in their purchasing pattern apart from these subtle hints.
Right.
That's what big data gives you.
Okay, so really what you're suggesting is we can now start looking at, it's almost a big brother thing, right? But we can start looking at people's buying patterns over time, and when they purchase something, we can now look at their history and say, well, where were the changes earlier? Now, so that's Target doing that, which is an amazing concept. How can a small business take advantage of something like that?
So the first step is to collect all of the data.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you want to do. And the 3 V's they talk about the 3 V's of big data, which is velocity, volume, and variety. So you want as much data as you can. Yep. You want to get it coming in as quickly as you can. And you want to look at all sorts of different things. And I know in one of our, the business plans for one of our businesses, we had to do some, we wanted to target businesses in rural Australia. Yep. So we looked at data from Australia Post. We looked we got some information from a local government council register, and there was a couple of other websites where we got data.
Yeah.
Smashed all of that together, then ran our queries to work out where our target market was.
Right.
The internet is providing the tools for small businesses to be able to analyze this thing, and even things like Power Pivot, which is a free add-on for Excel, is a really great tool to start looking at your customers, adding different bits of information, different views on those customers, and then starting to draw out great insights into what it is that they're looking at.
Right. So you mentioned the 3 V's, right? So the first one being volume, right? So now we can all of a sudden we can start measuring the amount of volume that our clients are purchasing by using statistics. The second one was an important one for me, which is velocity. See, often with our old method of testing and measuring, we couldn't actually see velocity as a measurement because it's a measurement of time. And so we didn't have timely measurement for when people do certain things. To me, one of the things that the internet is introducing is speed. And, a lot of people's expectation is that things get done immediately now. I know, for example, if I'm online and I'm browsing on a website, I expect to be able to action or ask questions immediately. So one of the things that seems to be becoming more popular is having these pop-up windows with an attendant, a chat attendant. Now, it sounds like it's complicated technology, but really stuff like that's not that hard to do anymore, is it?
Absolutely. So there's a whole range of people who provide that service.
Yeah.
And that is just one of the services that are out there, which means that in your business, you can start to get access to the tools that big business always had access to.
Yeah.
They would just go ahead and write their own application to do that. None of us have the budget to be able to do that.
Right.
So you can grab the pieces of web functionality that you want and add that into your business.
Right.
We've got some help desk software, which is very powerful.
Yeah.
Is used by a lot of really large companies.
Yep.
I think we pay $50 a month for it.
Okay.
But it keeps track of every support request for one of our businesses.
Okay. And so you're right, because I know, like for IT, for example, I don't expect a technician to come out anymore. I expect to call them, and all of a sudden they're online, they're jumping in, and they're fixing things straight away. So this whole velocity thing sort of comes from many different angles as well. We're going back to the sort of information on big data. What we're really trying to do here is take as much information as we can capture and use it to start predicting buying decisions of our clients. So that's really the key there, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're looking for the insights into it. There was an Australian company that sells games, so a retail company, and they introduced a loyalty program where you could sign up and get information about their products. And they ran through all of their data, and they found that Call of Duty and Modern Warfare games, which are first-person shooters, the single largest buying segment was women aged 30 to 39.
Really?
That's what they said. And it raised all sorts of questions. Why?
Yeah.
Why would that happen? Why would it, they don't play our games, or do they?
Yeah.
And it started to raise a whole heap of questions. When I first heard the story, it was like, oh, that sounds a bit weird. And I thought, no, that's my wife. My wife buys Call of Duty.
Really?
She does.
For who?
For my 9-year-old son.
There you go.
So that was the insight that they needed.
Yeah.
When they're in their sign-up process, they now have a position where you can put the email address of your son, because sending an email about the new Call of Duty to my wife is going to get zero cut through.
Yeah.
Sending it to my son will result in hours of relentless harassing. Can I please get the new Modern Warfare? Can I please get the new Modern Warfare? Can I please get the new Modern Warfare? So that little, and that was for a retail business.
Yeah. So really, I suppose what you're suggesting is that we've got this ability now to use a CRM. In a much more granular way, where we can actually build massive databases of not only the person who buys from us, but also the person who uses the product in that situation. Second thing is we can start building data based on how they interact. So I know one of the things we've implemented in our CRM is every time we send out an email, any link that is clicked within that email is now stored as a history. Now, not just the history that they clicked the link, but I suppose, almost the psychographic of what that link was about. So, like, for example, we send out emails with information about time management or marketing or team building. And there's 3 links in the same email. Now, if you click the time management link, it doesn't say you click the link. It actually says, James is interested in time management. So we actually interpret that information and give it to our marketing department. And we're now building an intelligence which says, well, if he's interested in time management, let's put him into a campaign that promotes a time management product or service. And also, when the telesalesperson calls, they get a task on their list that actually says, when you ring James, invite him to the time management workshop. So it's so much more prescriptive based on their activity.
Absolutely, and they're the kind of insights that you can dramatically increase your conversion rates, and decrease your cost to acquire a customer. Mm-hmm. And these are the kind of advantages that small businesses are starting to take advantage of.
Yeah.
And these are going to be the successful businesses that prosper, because it really is a market advantage.
So let me ask you, this big data, like, it sounds obvious when you're a big organisation. Can a small organisation, like a small business, let's say we're talking about a plumber, for example.
Yep.
How can a plumber take advantage of big data?
So for a plumber, when you think, the first question is, what data do you have? And that's going to highlight, maybe there's holes in the processes that they've got. They should be collecting more data.
Yeah.
Where do their customers come from? What part of their marketing spend's working, what part of it isn't.
Yeah.
But probably the data that they're going to have is their billing data for their engineers.
Yeah.
And far too many times, we do a lot of work with other IT companies, and we talk to a lot of them about effective utilisation rate for engineers.
Yes.
And often ITs are notoriously bad for it because a lot of fixed price contracts are done, and people don't know what the rate is that they're actually they're charging per hour.
Right.
So for a plumber, that would be the first thing. Which is your best plumber? If you've got 4 guys out on the road,
right? Because
if they're on the road, how long are we going to take for lunch? Half an hour, or did you say an hour and a half?
Yep.
It's 4:30. Is there time enough to squeeze another job in?
Yeah.
It's probably knock off time, eh? So one of the things that we like to do is to turn that around and give the actual employees ownership of that. You put that data up,
right?
Analyze that data, and then start putting it up so that everyone can see what everyone's billing.
Right. So what we're talking about now is using big data inside the organisation as well as for marketing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's interesting because what you just brought up about hourly rate, one of my pet hates. Okay, because I don't believe hourly rate is an effective measure. Because if we think about what hourly rate is, that's getting paid for time, not for productivity. Now, as a business owner, I don't want to pay for people's time. I want to pay for their output.
Yep.
But as an employee, employees want to be paid for time because that way the responsibility is with the owner. So often what we do is we start putting incentive schemes in place. Now, with this information that's available from what you've just suggested, we can actually measure productivity. And I think it's becoming important because, I was just watching the news the other night about the Ford factory closing down and how all these workers are now out of a job and, their futures have been ruined. And really that's a structural change because there's no way that Australia can compete with the international markets. Now, that's going to impact so many other industries. But it's a structural change that's coming. I know, for example, retail is one of those areas that only the fittest will survive. And if the retailers cannot pick up on what's going on and actually adapt to it, and I'm not talking about just surviving, I'm talking about embracing the new technology because it is not going away. People are going to shop online, and if you can't demonstrate a value difference between what you have and what's available online, people are going to buy the cheapest product. So the demands are create value. Now, if that means that your guys have to be more efficient on the road for the plumber, then you need to measure that because what gets measured
gets managed.
Yep. So this whole idea of big data is quite exciting for me because, for 13 years I've been preaching about testing and measuring, and I've been trying to sort of help clients understand how do we measure things. What we can do now is do it all through the systems and then use that data to optimize our efficiency and our value.
Absolutely. One of the issues that we had was ticket resolution times. And so all we did is we've got a monitor that goes through some various KPIs in the company.
Yeah.
And we put that up, and the person who had the lowest resolution time had a really nice house next to their name.
Yeah.
Then there was a house that was they were cars, and the first one was a Lamborghini, then there was a Porsche,
Mm.
then there was a Holden, then there was like a Datsun 180B,
Yeah.
and then there was a donkey in a cart.
Mhm.
And no one wanted to have the donkey in the cart. So people, and I was going to make an announcement the next day in our Monday morning meeting.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to, because the engineer came up, had a look at it.
Mm.
He took a long time to close his tickets. This look came across his face. He went back and started closing tickets.
Right.
And just that, gentle peer pressure started to change the way that the people within the company were managing that.
So publishing the data to the team becomes a self-management tool.
Absolutely.
Okay, and this is a really important fact, because we're now talking about business management, and we're talking about self-motivated team members, and one of the best ways to do that is share the data.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Look, I wanted to change topics. I noticed you had a slide up before that was a guy with Google glasses on.
Yes.
And I know you went over to the States, and I know you spent some time in Silicon Valley.
Yep.
I just want to ask you, what were the insights? What were the takeaway, like the big things you learned over there that you think that the business community needs to know about?
So that's Olive. He was our tour guide through the Google campus, and I actually got a brief play with the Google glasses, and I think really that's the big signpost of the way ahead, is that the data is going to be incredibly pervasive. It's on everyone's mobile phone now, but literally they have got the information while they're talking to you.
Right.
They're not even they're just glancing up quickly up at the screen. It's listening in on what's going on. It can be recording it. So really very pervasive use of the internet. They're doing a lot of work around search engine optimization to try and make it, really their job is to find the information, the answer for the problem that you've got. And so they're pushing ahead with that. Maps, Google Maps, there's a massive investment there. And I don't think that a lot of business owners realize how important it is to have their business listed in Google Maps.
Right. It's Google Places, is it?
Yeah. So they've got a whole range of ways that they skin it. Okay. All you got to do is basically list it there. They send a letter out to your business address with a code in it. You type that in, and then it's authorized.
Yeah.
When people do a search, that will then come up.
Right.
So, and whether it's on a desktop or whether it's on a mobile phone, people, particularly for people like running restaurants, anything where people are likely to be mobile, that's a critical advantage that you're going to have.
Absolutely. And look, taking a step back, even these days, you watch people. We were shopping on the weekend, and I noticed that every second person who's shopping for white goods or whatever it might be, they've got a phone in their hand.
Yep.
So they're looking at products, and while they're looking at it, they're also scanning the internet. So it's very difficult to just have like the same product that's available online for half the price. It's getting harder and harder to get away with that sort of thing. How would you suggest someone combats that sort of situation? Have you any ideas around that?
Well, I think it's very difficult, because I do the exact same thing, and I do it for two reasons. One, I want to make sure I'm happy to pay a small premium to go and talk to someone, but the person that you're talking to is a salesperson,
right?
So I want to see reviews.
Yeah.
And I think that really it comes down to thinking about white goods. It needs to be a volume play, and I think you need to open up that information so that people have got it there, so that the guy said, look, it's more expensive, but it's here. You can have a look at it. You can open up the door of the fridge.
Yeah.
Is this what you want? We need to charge a small premium for that, and I'm happy to do that. And I think most people are happy to do that.
Right.
But not a large premium though.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing there really is show me why I should pay more.
Exactly.
So if I know people are doing this, probably the last thing I want to do is stick my head in the sand and be in denial about what's going on and say, it's impossible. The truth of the matter is, if people are going to be searching online, you need to give them a reason why they should stick with you and pay a marginal difference or even a greater difference. And this is really interesting, because with Google Glasses, what you alluded to is people are going to be predictive in what the information is that they've got. So they could be looking at a product, and while they're looking at it, it's doing a search online for price and availability in other stores without even mentioning it.
I think that when you look at something like that, in an industry that obviously has significant structural changes that are going to make things difficult, thinking from an entrepreneurial type of viewpoint,
Yes.
one of the most important indicators of the success of a new startup
Yeah.
is domain expertise.
Right.
Do you understand the white goods industry?
Yeah.
What are the suppliers? What are their motivators?
Right.
What are the buyers? What are
Mm.
their motivators?
Mm-hmm.
What's the competition like?
Right.
And if you're not wedded to a retail presence,
Yeah.
if you're not wedded to a storefront,
Yeah.
then you've got a lot of power to be able to take your business online,
Mhm.
dramatically increase the volume that you're doing,
Yeah.
and create a similar model to someone like Kogan,
Right.
who that's what he's done. Now, he didn't have domain expertise when he started out. I think he was quite young when he started his business.
Yeah. He's in his 20s.
But there'll be people out there who know how the business runs.
Yeah.
Taking that information, then moving their business online can work really powerfully.
Yeah. And I suppose the other side is to be dual, like being online and offline at the same time.
Absolutely, because then you cater to both buyers. The older you get, you're less likely you'll be to be sitting there on Amazon reading the reviews.
That's
so
right.
You still need to cater for that. And if you've got the large volumes going through, then your price point's going to be a lot more cost effective.
Yep. And I know, for example, I run and I buy my runners and I go to one of the highly specialised running stores. They have the treadmill there and they check out your gait on your feet and they try and fit you to the right shoe. And it's a perfect system of value. And then at the end they say, we're going to give you these shoes, and if you run on them for 30 days and you don't feel they're the right shoe, bring them back in and we'll change them. So what they've done is they've basically removed the competitors from online by offering that sort of service. So all of a sudden I'm saying, well, that's okay, because even if I pay 50% more, I know that it's the right shoe, and if it isn't, I can change it at no charge. Most online stores wouldn't do that. So
No.
it's a point of difference. Now, so long as they're providing that level of value, I don't mind paying the extra money. And so people do have to go beyond what they used to, because value used to be about placement, having the product available in the store. These days I can buy from anywhere around the world and have it within 3 days. So what value proposition do people have? And that's really becoming the key here, isn't it?
And that's the thing. One of the companies that I spoke to while I was over there was Westfield, because they've set up a investment fund to allow to support startups that have product to make more people go into malls, because that's what their whole business is.
Yeah.
And so they're very interested in looking at entrepreneurial startups who have got a reason to make it a lot more experiential.
Yes.
When you go to the mall, and that's why you've got things like the fine dining restaurants there,
right?
That they're trying to make available to the masses to make to give people more reasons to go into a store, because it is relatively doom and gloom. But at the end of the day, there's the physical interaction. You're actually physically in a place, so there's a lot of things that you can do physically that you can't do over the net.
That's right.
And a lot of people forget that.
And I do believe, we can call it doom and gloom for retailers, but I look at the opportunity side of that and say, well, it's just the market's changing. It's neither good nor bad, because there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And typically when there's change, the losers are the people that don't change.
Absolutely.
And the winners are the guys that anticipate the change, because when there's structural change, it's like a big wave. The objective is to ride the wave. And so when you look at things like Google Glasses, for example, knowing that Google has taken over where Yellow Pages left off, but in a bigger and better way, all we need to do is look at the technology and say, well, how can we optimize this for our business? So it's naive to think we don't need to learn about this stuff. And I think one of the key things, and it's a responsibility of the business owner, is to say, well, online marketing is a no-brainer.
Yes.
CRM is a no-brainer. Having this information about the buying patterns of my clients is critical, because it's the only way we're going to survive. Because if we don't do it, someone from overseas can now come into our market and steal it from us.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's the thing that we did, because a couple of tools that we use internally in our business is Porter's 5 Forces, which looks at the structural changes within an industry.
So what's that? Porter's 5 Forces.
Yeah. It's a tool that's been around for 10, 15 years, but it looks at an industry, and this is generally used for larger companies or for new startups.
Yep.
But I think it's particularly valuable for small businesses who are trying to make sense of the transition that's happening in their industry because of the internet.
Yep. So can you run me through what are the 5 forces?
So the threat of new entry, how hard is it for people to start up in your business? And so looking at IT, anyone can say that they're an IT expert and start going out and looking after people's servers.
Right.
So there's very low barriers of entry.
Yep.
There's no real. There's some economies of scale, but not great. It's hard to get technology protection. So that's one of the things that makes it difficult.
Yes.
Lots of competition, moderate switching costs for people. They tend not to like to change IT provider, although now with the economy the way it is, it's pushing people to move towards low-cost IT providers.
Yep.
The buying power
Yep.
of your customers. So if you've got one customer that is that makes up 80% of your business, they have a large amount of power over you.
Right.
And supplier power.
Yep.
And so if you look at IT, one of our big suppliers is Microsoft. They're also one of our big competitors.
Right.
Now that's one of the things that's changed in the last 3 years.
Yes.
So our biggest supplier of technology is now a competitor selling directly to our customers.
Right. Okay. So really the shifting sands, they're becoming more and more dramatic. So we look at this, and this probably brings up the cloud discussion.
Absolutely.
Because, this cloud thing, we hear a lot about it. It's up there in the sky. What are the opportunities for the small business guy with this cloud? How can they actually apply or use it right now to actually improve the way they're doing business?
So the cloud is basically when people have got server infrastructure that scales as their business scales.
Yep.
And so you've got people like Amazon and Microsoft who are providing computing power to businesses. Mm-hmm. And Amazon's commitment is to decrease prices continually.
Yep.
Microsoft's commitment is to be cheaper than Amazon.
Okay.
So a lot of people are moving some of their... we're seeing a lot of people who had 3 or 4 servers moving 1 or 2 of those into the cloud. Typically the less business critical ones. Because there are a couple of caveats.
Yep.
The first one is you need an internet connection.
Right.
If your internet goes down for any reason, then you're not going to have access to all of your line of business applications.
Absolutely.
And as you move into rural Australia, that's a bigger issue because the speeds are slower.
Yep.
Data sovereignty laws. A lot of the data is kept overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got issues like the Patriot Act. We had one hospital that was looking at it, and that as soon as they found out that it was overseas, that put an end to it.
Yep.
Because it creates a whole legal jungle which no one really has any answers to.
Well, it's all new territory, isn't it?
It is new territory.
Yeah.
And then just last week, there was the issue with Edward Snowden and the PRISM saga. So the government, the US government, regularly makes liens on US companies for data about what people are searching for, what information that they've got. So your data isn't as safe as it is if it is on premise.
Sure.
So we're seeing some people who are keeping some of their, the family jewels on premise and then moving off and using applications, things like Evernote, which is free and a great productivity tool.
Yeah. We
don't store any, mission critical data in there. If it's not available, then it's not available. It's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
A lot of people using things like Dropbox. One of the interesting things, though, is that the capability of Dropbox is now being replicated on premise by some people.
Right.
So they're using little storage devices to store all of their data available to the people that they want it to have availability to from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Full Dropbox type capability, just not in the cloud.
Yeah. Okay. So really what's happening is when the cloud first comes out, like with any technology, it's exciting and it's big and it has an extreme sort of presence where people go, oh, that's the end of everything. Then what happens is reality comes in and it becomes a combination. And this is like with internet. We talk about internet marketing and people go, I should just start an online business. So I don't believe that's the case. I think your business can use online as part of its strategy. When you integrate, that's when you win.
Absolutely. So
it's not one or the other, it's both. And that's what's really happening is it's just another conduit or facility within the business.
I think it's important, though, to recognise that it does give you huge capabilities. It does allow small businesses to do what big businesses used to do.
Yeah.
So looking at our business, we aggregate a lot of data for restaurants because we do a lot of online marketing work with restaurants.
Yeah.
We aggregate all of that and we then run big data queries over it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the exciting thing about that is that the infrastructure to do that is probably, by the time you put hardware licensing and setup time,
Mm.
it's probably a $25,000 solution.
Yeah.
We pay under $100 a month for it.
Right. Okay.
Because we're using the cloud.
So that's one of your big business, because I know you're very entrepreneurial in what you do, and really, you started off when I first met you as an IT company.
Yep.
And now you're in so many other spaces. So look, I suppose helping the people that are on the call, they're in these businesses at the moment, and things are moving. What sort of advice or suggestions would you give to someone in business in general about how to deal with this internet coming on as it's almost like a tidal wave?
I think that the successful businesses are those that think entrepreneurially.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of things that we've done.
So what does that mean? Just before you go on,
Yep.
when you say think entrepreneurially, what does that mean to you?
You need to, generally that's for startups, but I think it is taking an entrepreneurial mindset and applying it to an existing business is really powerful, because you've got an existing business, you've got an existing cash flow. You're not a startup with no customers.
Right.
You've already got customers. You can already have a conversation with them about how you could take the business and how that would affect them.
So when you say entrepreneurial in an existing business, that's like being innovative.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Think about new ways, the way that the industry is changing. Use something like Porter's Five Forces, because it gives you an idea about, how you can change the business to better serve your customers.
Right. Because it's really a question of value, isn't it, these days?
Absolutely.
People are looking at your business and saying, well, what increment or increase in value are you providing for me now compared to what you did last year? There's a famous saying, and it came from Robert Kiyosaki, and he said, a capitalist's job is to reduce the cost of their service. And I never understood it at the start. I thought surely you'd be about putting your prices up, because that's what we talk about. But really what he's talking about is improving value.
Yes.
Okay, so when you say entrepreneurial, what you're suggesting is you need to shake the can up a bit sometimes and sort of look at the whole industry and the business that you're in and say, well, how can we do it better?
And there's a lot of ways out there. And this is the big opportunity. The internet is scary for a lot of businesses, particularly a lot of small businesses.
Yep.
But when you start realizing that there's a problem and you start looking for solutions, you'll find that there's a lot more solutions that are a lot better than the problems that you've got. One of the things that we're about to do for our customers is to release free access to training in Microsoft Office applications.
Right.
And that will be available from the desktop. So if your staff have got, a free 15 minutes, they can do a quick course on mail merge.
Wow.
And that'll be available from an icon in the bottom right-hand corner.
Okay.
A cloud-based business in New Zealand who set that capability up, along with a lot of other things that we'll be rolling out to our customers.
Right.
So we're going to be helping our customers to be able to use their investment in IT better.
Yep.
That's just one little tiny thing that will be a clear differentiator between us and our competitors.
You're right.
And, really increases your value proposition.
Yeah, and it is important, because here we are, we're talking about this online today. Someone's going to listen up and say, yeah, we can copy that. But I suppose the strength is, James, you're constantly, and this is what inspires me, is you're constantly looking for better ways of doing things.
Yes.
And if you're constantly looking, it's the old seek and you shall find. The technology is moving so quickly that if you don't look around, you're missing out on what's going on. Not everything's going to work. There's a lot of mess. There's a lot of mistakes that will be made. The trick is to control costs, but to constantly look at how can I do it better.
Talk to your customers.
Yep.
Find out what they want. Find out what they think your value proposition is. We use a process, lean startup process, the methodology behind that.
Right.
Because we have an idea about what our customers want, but a lot of the time that's not what they really want.
Yep.
So the things that we spend a lot of money on providing them, does that create value? Are there things that we could not spend a lot of money on that would create great value for them?
Yep.
Look at those sort of things continually. We found that with marketing for restaurants, some of the features that we spend a lot of time and effort in, no one uses.
Yes.
So we use Facebook now to create a conversation about potential features.
Right.
Would you like this? Would you use this in your restaurant? And then I ring them up. Why would you use it? How would it look like?
Yeah.
So we actually get our customers to design features for themselves.
And this is the thing with social media, and one of the sayings I heard around social media, because everyone asks, should I use Facebook to market my business? And it's like asking, should I use a computer to run my business?
Yep.
It's not a question of should you. The question is, how can I? Okay. And really, what you just mentioned there is being interactive.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of social media is you can ask a question and have a conversation running in the background if you actually have it set up that way. It's not about just selling product anymore. It's about asking good questions. It's about finding out what's going on. Twitter, I never understood Twitter. I never understood why someone would want to do a microblog or write down, in 140 characters what they're doing right now. Until someone showed me, they said, look at this, you can jump on Twitter's website, you log in, and it tells you what people are talking about
Yes.
around the world instantly. And so all of a sudden you've got access to what people's thoughts and processes and discussions are about. And it showed up for me one time I was doing a presentation here in the office, and I felt like someone had smashed into the building because the projector started to shake. And I said, what was that? And this one guy in the audience, he pulls out his phone and he's on Twitter and he goes, we just had an earthquake. I said, how do you know? He goes, look at this. And all of a sudden there's a hashtag earthquake in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And this is instant access to information. So what you suggested about this getting information from people is key. Actually using that as part of entrepreneurialism or innovation, people have to get into this thought process. If the information's right at your fingertips now on your computer, how can I get it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good, very good. So look, I know we're sort of getting to the end of the time, and I really value your input. So if we're going to wrap up, some of the guys on the call, they're running small businesses, and they're really looking for those key differentiators. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you'd suggest they need to do right now?
I think